From love and marriage, horse and carriage, for kids, from farming to hardware stores, plow businesses, and finally, a car that bears their name, Kissel. But before getting into all of it, I'm your host, Jay. Welcome to What It's Like, the automotive channel that dives in deep on cars that you may have never heard of. History, specs, design. Post between 4 and 5 episodes a week with engine episodes sprinkled in. If any of that sounds of interest to you, subscribe and hit the bell icon next to it to never miss a video. 1926 Kissel model lineup. But before getting into the 1926 models, Kissel Motor Car Company was founded by Louis Kissel and his 4 sons in Hartford, Wisconsin in 1906. Louis started his company with very little. Kissel started off small, building cars in 2 buildings with a team of 70 men. The business would quickly fill out to a 16-acre complex. It's important to note, the Kissel family also had history, a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak. The Kissel family had a successful farming career, and then they got into hardware business. Property owners, land developers, mill operators. They even got into the plow business as well as the power company. They owned a lot of Hartford, Wisconsin. They almost had their own little town within, it was almost like a town within a town. Kissel cars were built of that old world craftsmanship, and they were best known for their advanced design and outstanding performance. They would get into the professional car business, building hearses, ambulances, flower cars around 1916. They also built trucks, 3/4-ton trucks, all the way up to 6 tons. Kissel would build 4-wheel drive versions from 1912 through 1919 called the Model B. Kissel was one of the very first companies to offer an enclosed body, but this enclosed body worked different than most other enclosed bodies at the time. Yes, Franklin had the demi sedan. Other companies did carry the demi sedan as well. This top was removable. Very interesting concept. Kissel would build the Kissel car spelled K-A-R, for over a decade. The car spelling would be changed after 1919 in the wake of World War I because the word car was deemed to be too German. One of Kissel's claim to fame is they claim to be the very first company to light a dashboard, instrumentation indirectly. So something that I just found out is that Kissel offered a V12 using the Wildly V12, which will totally need to be covered in an engine episode one day. Kissel's V12 was called the Double Six, aimed directly at Packard's Twin Six. Kissel Double Six was only offered for 2 seasons. Production would climb until hitting its peak in 1926, when Kissel would produce 1,972 units. By 1930, that number would whittle away to just 200 cars being sold that year. Kissel would produce around 27,000 cars while in business. So, you're probably wondering what happened to Kissel. Well, Kissel's downfall came on the precipice of something revolutionary. The car that came down from heaven with angels singing, ah, with the wings flapping, and all of it. I mean, it was all new, low slung, and that's what you really need to watch out for. You really need to watch out for the low slung. It will always get you when you least expect it. Turn around and you're like, hello, I didn't see you there. How much of that did you hear? Front wheel drive, wood lights. So Kissel would get wrapped up with New Era Motors. Kissel believing that the Ruxton, which was what New Era Motors was to name their car, Ruxton, after a successful, super rich guy, William V.C. Ruxton. After William Ruxton found out that there was going to be a car using his name, he tried to force New Era to pick a different name. Unsuccessful. He was unsuccessful in all his attempts. Archie Andrews, who was the brains of the operation over at New Era Motors, if you could really call it that, needed a place to build his cars. So Kissel provided that in exchange for $250,000 in new loans to the company. for the commitment to produce 1,500 Ruxton cars. In the very beginning, it was just to produce engines and transmissions, but then those plans would ultimately change because Moon Motors wasn't building the cars to Archie Andrews' expectations. Kissel also had the obligation to build 5 White Eagle funeral cars. Archie Andrews was a sly weasel. He didn't hold up to his end of the deal. He just stopped paying after $100,000, which is what this guy liked to do. He just liked to pay half, tried to stock manipulate, and bankrupt companies take over. The Kissels weren't having any of it, and they did not want Andrews to end up with their company. So George Kissel would ask a creditor to put Kissel Motor Car Company in receivership. But what Archie Andrews probably didn't realize is George Kissel had the last shot across the bow of the boat, hitting Archie Andrews right in the chest. Because when George put Kissel in receivership, it put an end to building Ruxtons. Kissel would produce 26 Ruxtons. That's not the end of the Kissel story, though. In 1932, a new company would spawn with Kissel's name, Kissel Industries, which made marine engines. In 1935, Sears Roebuck would sell Kissel outboard engines. George Kissel would perish in 1942, which was the same year Kissel Industries was sold to West Bend Aluminum Company, who made aluminum cookware, appliances, and two-stroke cycle and outboard engines. The engine company would be sold to Chrysler and then to Brunswick, and now it resides at U.S. Motor Power. The 1926 Kissel model lineup was broken down into 2 models. The Model 55, which rides the shorter wheelbase and is powered by the 6-cylinder, could be had in standard or deluxe flavor, and the Model 75, which rides the longer chassis and is powered by the Lycoming Straight 8. The 1926 Model 55 could be had in body styles such as, but not limited to, Phaeton 7-passenger Touring, 2-passenger Speedster, 4-passenger Speedster, 4-passenger Tourer, 4-passenger Coupe, 5-passenger Brougham, 2-passenger enclosed Speedster, 4-passenger enclosed Speedster, 7-passenger sedan, 5-passenger Victoria, and a different 7-passenger sedan. Let's talk specs. Rides a wheelbase of 121 inches. It's important to note that you could get the Speedster in both Model 55 and Model 75. Our featured car is the Model 55, so it's on the shorter wheelbase. It weighs around 3,190 pounds. Price, $1,795, which would be equivalent to you spending $31,994.91 in the year 2025. Happy New Year, everyone. Kissel's Speedster would be known as the Gold Bug. The Gold Bug would eventually transform into the White Eagle Speedster years later. Kissel, for whatever reason, I don't know why I've been wanting to say Keister. Total Kissel for the whole production run, the whole company run was 27,000 units. Total Kissel for 1926 was 1,972 units, and of the Kissels produced, only about 150 are known to survive. Moving on to engine, only one engine for the Model 55, 265 cubic inch displacement, flathead, inline 6, 4.3 liters. It was good for 61 horsepower, 2,800 RPM with an estimated 120 pound-feet or 162 newton meters around 1,000 RPM with a bore of 3.3125 inches and a stroke of 5.125 inches. It is backed to a 3-speed manual transmission. Let's talk styling on a car that you rarely ever see. This car has wood lights, which were an aftermarket or sometimes offered from manufacturers as dealership installed accessories. This car looks great with the wood lights, which isn't a thing that you can say with all cars. They're a great concept, they're a great looking light, but they just don't look good on all cars. They were usually found on higher end cars. Wood lights sit on this bar that runs right in front of the grille that is connected to both fenders for structural rigidity. Clean radiator shell that sits back. Bumpers have 3 bars without overriders and or bumperettes. Man, those wood lights just make this car look so incredible. Kissel motometer, which reads the coolant temperature. Intricate wings that spread off of it. Fenders, wood spoke wheels. Couple things to notice about these wood spoke wheels. The spoke design is thinner when it connects to the ring and it flares out going towards the hub as opposed to being the same size and shape. And on top of all of that, there are pinstriped Kissel in the center hubcap riding on bias ply tires. Mud flaps on the front fenders, which is a really nice touch. Check this out. There isn't a connection, or I should say the front fenders and the running boards are not connected. The running board curls up like a sled in the front of the running board part. Step plate, just above that is a spotlight, which is standing. It's mounted to both the running board and the cowl. Tiny cowl lights, cowl vent. Really cool windshield profile. The frame is only at the bottom and on the sides. The top doesn't have a frame portion to the windshield. The windshield is also notched at the top. Wings, bright door hinges, but there isn't any external door handles. Material on top of the bodywork for armrest. This is a very curvy, rounded body. The design doesn't have any edges to speak of. Bead bars to add external trunk with tie-down points. This one has a rumble seat, step pad, rumble seat. Rear bumper has 3 bars, just like the front bumper, but it's split in the middle. This one features a split bumper because it has the spare tire in the center. The spare tire in center. Also notice that the brake lights are also in the center in the opening for the hub for the wheel. License plate is mounted just below that. Gas filler is on the passenger side. Just look at how that little bit of red on the black spokes of the wheels just works. The colors work amazing together. Then you add in the black fender and add in a little bit of yellow, take a step back, and just look at how it all just works really well together. There are step pads on both sides to allow access into the rumble seat from both sides. And I think this is the only car that I can ever remember seeing with step pads on both sides. Here is what over the hood would look like. Here's what first person over the wooden steering wheel would look like. Coming down inside the pedal box, and man, it's tight. Clutch, brake, gas pedal, starter button, gear shift selector, and hand brake. On to the button switches and knobs, starting on the left hand, moving right. Lights for rear, dim, off, on, gasoline gauge, oil pressure, speedometer, and notice the numbers spin where the needle stays stationary. Odometer, trip odometer, amp meter, clock, fuse box. Remember, our coolant temperature is on the motometer outside. Taking a real quick gander under the hood sits the Flathead 6. Silver canister on the firewall is a vacuum gas pump. Gas filter in a glass bowl. Just above it, steering wheel column just below it. And you gotta love how accessible everything is. There's no plastic shit shields anywhere. There's no filler. If it's not under the hood, it doesn't belong there. Going to the other side, and judging by the size of the timing cover, I'd venture to say that this engine uses timing gears. Just an assumption based on the size of that timing cover. I honestly don't know. A shaft that comes off and runs the water pump. Intake and exhaust are both on the passenger side. Updraft carburetor. I love that they were able to keep all of the wires in this one corner on the passenger side of the engine, giving the engine bay a nice, clean, and tidy appearance. On the positive side, this is the most iconic car from Kissel brand. Like, if you were to say Kissel, this is the car that you would probably think of. Timeless design, low slung body, which gets you every time. This car looks great with wood lights. 61 horsepower doesn't sound like a whole lot of power, but it's long stroke power, and that's a difference. The analogy that I often use is 35 degrees here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in January is pretty comfortable. That same 35 degrees down in Florida in January will feel like absolute hell. 50 feels like absolute hell in January. It's the same number, but a totally different story. CCCA, Classic Car Club of America, classic status type car. Against it, parts are extinct. People who know these cars are few and far between, expensive to buy, restore, operate, and climate control garage is an absolute must. All right, now it's time for Would You Rather. Two scenarios today, and these are not fair, but which one would you rather have? In the first scenario, 1925 Mercer Raceabout, or 1926 Kissel Gold Bug, or 1926 Stutz Bearcat. I'm going to leave this here for a minute. If you need more time, feel free, pause the video. On to the second scenario, 1926 Packard, or 1926 Kissel Gold Bug, or 1926 Hupmobile. Once again, going to leave this here for a minute. If you need more time, feel free, pause the video. Now it's time for Name That Tune. First person to get both the name of the band and the song title correctly in the comment section will have their comment pinned to the top of it. Thank you all so much for coming out and watching this. If you'd like to get in touch with me, shoot me a comment in the comment section below, or you can always send me an email at what_its_like@yahoo.com. Thanks again for everything that you guys bring, and until next time, toodaloo! Welcome to the after show. This part of the video doesn't have any sound or commentary or music, but you can put whatever music you wish in the background. Enjoy.